Hello, folks. This is Kevin from Good Day, Good Prayers. Today, I'm going to talk about something that I probably shouldn't talk about at all, but it is something that within the next 10 to 12 years, you're going to be finding out about. Some of you already have some ideas about it, but we're going to discuss it in a little bit greater detail. It's kind of hard to know how to start this because of the fact that it has to do with string theory. Now, according to what most people will tell you, there are multiple timelines going along. Now, the multiple timelines are timelines from every part of history. But each part of history has at least 12 timelines with it. And the fact is that even now, there are supposed to be 12 timelines that are moving simultaneously next to each other. The problem is that timelines can be destroyed. Now, the more timelines that are destroyed, the greater the possibility of stopping time. So when a situation happens in history, if somebody is able to destroy one of those timelines, that means that there are now only 11 timelines going along in history. Now, what happens is that each of those timelines are a little bit different than the one next to it. And so in this timeline, you might be married to husband or wife A, and in another timeline, you're married to spouse B, and in another timeline, C and D, and maybe in some timelines, you're not married at all. Maybe in some timelines, instead of being married once or maybe twice, you might have been married 3 or 4 or 5 times. So each situation is different. Also, some things that are different is the number of jobs that you've had. Maybe in this timeline, you've had 1 or 2 jobs, and you've worked those jobs and became a professional, whatever it is you are. In another job, you might be a factory worker. In a third job, you might be working with janitorial service. So every situation is different. You may be highly educated in one of the timelines, and you may not be so educated in others. You may have a doctorate or a master's degree. You may have a bachelor degree, or you may have just barely graduated high school. Depends on who you are in each of those timelines. Now, your attitudes and the things that you are going to say and so on is going to be also different in each timeline. You may be a certain type of person in timeline A and a completely different person in timeline B. And that could happen in multiple different situations. So let's talk about some of the things that are going on then today. And let's start back and say 2012. In 2012, Obama was trying to become reelected, and of course, eventually he was reelected. It is, unfortunately, a fact that when the deep state globalists were running the world, there were going to be 2 people that were going to run for president in each 4-year election. Now, those 2 people, one would become the nominee of the Democrat Party, one would be the nominee of the Republican Party. And then these two people would have to go before a person who was in charge of elections. And that person then would tell them what was going to happen in the election. Okay, in this election, so-and-so is going to win. And here are the rules that you have to follow during the politicking of this particular election. And so that's how it would work. Now, there were no simple choices in that regard. However, let's say that the globalists, the alliance has control of this timeline, and maybe one or two other timelines, but the globalists have control of these timelines. Okay, so you've got 12 timelines. In 2012, the timelines began to get destroyed. Now, the timelines that were being destroyed, of course, were the timelines that the globalists had control of, but they were concerned about the alliance getting control of a particular timeline. And so they would go ahead and they would struggle against it and fight against it until they destroyed the timeline. So that then was one less timeline that the alliance couldn't get a hold of. You see, the globalists realized from, and we talked about it, Project Looking Glass, that they were not going to win. And so what they did is they decided they were going to destroy timelines. And so in the timelines that President Trump won in 2016, of course he became president in January of 20th of 2017. And what happens then is that they tried to destroy him, and they tried to destroy him in that timeline. Now, I'm sure that in some timelines, many of us have been destroyed. It's possible that there may be 5 or 6 timelines that used to be present in our particular day, but they're gone now because the globalists were successful in destroying those timelines. This is one of the reasons why it is so important that as many portals as the alliance can close, they close, so that the globalists can't get to other timelines to destroy them. And there's still most likely 1 or 2 timelines out there that the globalists have control of. Now, if that's the case, then in those timelines, Harris won. And in the timelines that the alliance has control of, then President Trump won. And that's how it works. And unfortunately, it's a war. It's World War III. We talk about World War III. Now let's talk about the personal part of the timelines. Let's say that you hear talking. Okay? That talking may not be here on this timeline. You may be actually hearing conversations that you are having with other people on other timelines. So you're talking here, and suddenly you discover that you can't seem to stay in a conversation that you happen to be in because you're hearing talking over here. Where's it coming from? It's coming from a different conversation that you are having on a different timeline. Interesting, huh? This is Kevin from Good Day, Good Prayers. Please remember to give us a thumbs up. And also, please remember to subscribe to Good Day, Good Prayers as well as to our channel, DSR Chats. We appreciate your help. Now, you folks have a good day. And how do you have a good day? Well, they'll always start with prayers. And if those prayers reach the throne of God, you're going to have a good day. So, you know what? With that said, you have a good day.